think there will be a perfect utopian society in the future where everyone can say whatever they want to say? What do you think? You can share your thoughts in the comment section. Today, let's discuss a topic that's been wrongly interpreted by many people, namely freedom of speech. Over the years, on the internet from all over the world, many netizens often mention a viewpoint that Western countries are freer than other countries. Citizens in Western countries can say whatever they want, but in non-Western countries, it's not the same. For example, in the United States, one can freely insult their politicians in public, such as Biden or Trump. But here in China, this is basically impossible. Therefore, on the Chinese internet, many people have reached the conclusion that we are not as good as the West. The West has freedom of speech and is more advanced than China. But is this really the case? In August 2025, the renowned American news host Tucker Carlson held a forum in Florida. During the event, a young man raised this question.
Why can I burn an American flag in my country, but I get a mark by my name if I burn Israel's? Like, how?
Then halfway through the event, the young man was arrested.
Asking questions, folks. Just asking questions.
Well, we've just seen America. Let's take a look at the UK. In September 2025, a British white woman was arrested during an anti-immigration protest for displaying the British flag. Moreover, the flag was confiscated on the spot. In October 2025, a British guy named Pete North from North Yorkshire was arrested by the British police for making a post on the X platform that condemned Palestine, Hamas, and Islam. From these two examples, we can see that within the British civil service system, there are already a large number of non-white, non-Anglo-Saxon people in positions of power, countering the interests of the traditional British white people. Looking back at the history of the United States, even the president of the most powerful country in the world couldn't say whatever he wanted. For instance, the well-known former US President John Fitzgerald Kennedy signed the Executive Order 11110 on June 4, 1963. Kennedy clearly expressed his intention to authorize the Treasury Department to directly issue silver certificates backed by silver, attempting to break the monopoly of the Federal Reserve over currency issuance so that the government could obtain funds without paying interest. His words and actions harmed the interests of the actual ruling group of the United States. 5 months later, on November 22nd, Kennedy was assassinated, shot in the head, and died on the spot at the age of 46. His monetary reform plan was quickly terminated after his death. So, even the powerful Kennedy political family, despite reaching the pinnacle of power in the most developed country in the world, couldn't say whatever they wanted. Even the true cause of Kennedy's death was buried for several decades. In March 2025, Trump published 80,000 pages of investigation on the cause of Kennedy's death, maintaining the same conclusion as before, that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone perpetrator. Although Oswald was captured on the very day of Kennedy's assassination, however, just 2 days later, he was shot dead during a live television broadcast of his transfer to prison. Before his death, he repeatedly said, "I didn't shoot anyone, I was just a patsy."
Come on, man.
No, they're taking me in because of the fact that I lived in the Soviet Union. I'm just a patsy.
Not a single word from Trump's report mentioned which interest groups were behind this assassination. Apart from cases of political leaders from the West, there are also Julian Paul Assange and Edward Snowden. They are victims of the so-called free speech system advocated by the West. This shows that even in the most developed countries and societies that boast free speech, one cannot say whatever one wants. So today, the core concept I want to talk about is that from ancient times to present and even into the future, the so-called absolute freedom of speech never exists on Earth. Just like many concepts such as democracy, equality, and fraternity, they are all fictitious concepts created by humanity throughout history. The purpose of these fictitious concepts is to facilitate large-scale human cooperation, thereby bringing about the economic development or power transitions. I highly recommend Yuval Noah Harari's 2012 masterpiece, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. This book clearly explains the power of these fictitious concepts. This book is very good and worth reading. If you have ever looked up the definition of freedom of speech, you will find that in most modern countries, freedom of speech is regarded as the basic human right. However, in any country and any language system, freedom of speech is never equivalent to speaking without limits. Moreover, each country has clearly mapped out red lines for speech that harms national stability and various language taboos. Vladimir Lenin wrote in his 1917 work State and the Revolution as follows. The state is a product and a manifestation of the irreconcilability of class antagonisms. Therefore, every country has a specific ruling class. Here are some of my own summaries from reading and observing. Based on the actual ruling classes, all countries in the world could be roughly classified into 4 categories. Countries ruled by capitalists, countries ruled by civil officials, countries ruled by military officials, and countries ruled by religious leaders. Countries ruled by capitalists include the United States, South Korea, Israel, etc. Countries ruled by civil officials include China, Russia, United Kingdom, France, Germany, etc. Countries ruled by military officials include Myanmar, the Republic of Mali, etc. Religious and theocratic countries ruled by religious leaders include Saudi Arabia, Iran, Yemen, Vatican City, Afghanistan, etc. Of course, this classification is not necessarily so clear-cut. In some countries, they can be ruled by multiple types of interest groups at the same time. There are also some very special countries where the system is a monarchy under a civil system or capitalized feudalism. Behind all the actual ruling classes in every country, there are very clear family connections. So it's totally okay to openly criticize politicians in the United States because politicians there are not the actual ruling class. The real ruling class of the United States is the shadow government controlled by the powerful Jewish families. The information about these people is not even available in the public channels. Even people like Trump and Musk would not dare to publicly mention their names. This is why you can burn the American flag in the United States without any problem. But the Israeli flag, no, you just can't do it.
Oh, it's illegal to burn the Israeli flag. It's legal to burn to the United States flag.
Several cases have already made this very clear. Influential public figures such as rapper Kanye West and NBA player Kyrie Irving, after publicly making anti-Semitic remarks, they nearly got their lives ruined for good. Since the Gilded Age in the late 19th century, money politics in the United States has begun. Using money bribes and corruption to obtain political power can be completely open and legal in the United States. Since the Gilded Age, basically every elected American president has actually not been selected by ordinary people through democratic voting. Americans can freely criticize politicians, but in a country like China, which has been ruled by civil officials for over 2,000 years, you simply cannot do it. I have lived in the UK and France for nearly 6 years. I felt that as a foreigner, I often had to be very cautious with my speech in order to get along peacefully with locals in Europe. Some Europeans think that when they criticize various issues in China from a lofty perspective, they are doing something noble and righteous. However, when I discuss the various social problems in their own country with them, they would tell me to shut up. I had a white English friend from London who married a Chinese wife. During the pandemic in 2022, he vented his frenzy on WeChat Moments to criticize China, saying that the Chinese people are not free and cannot criticize their government. So I sent him a private message in WeChat and asked him, "Can you give a speech in Hyde Park in London to criticize the Queen?" Then he immediately diverted the topic. I also discussed with him that hypocrisy of the West in terms of freedom of speech. For example, the United States, as the most developed country in the world, initiated wars all over the globe. Any third world country that criticizes the United States will either be dragged into war or subjected to economic sanctions. He said that if you have never been to the United States, then you shouldn't criticize the country because you don't know it. Then I asked him, as a British person, why do you love the United States so much? According to your argument, when Britain was bombed by Germany during World War II, the British people should not have the right to criticize Germany because they had never been to Germany. Is that what you're saying? We then quickly ended this brief conversation. Later, he continued to curse China on his WeChat Moments, even though he has a Chinese wife. What's even more ironic is that this person works as a salesperson at Selfridges in London. The majority of his income comes from Chinese customers, since he studied Chinese language in university and can speak fluent Chinese. Chinese customers in London usually have very high spendings. A few months later, when I checked the WeChat again, I found that he had deleted me. In Europe, when I have different viewpoints from the locals, the Europeans wouldn't allow me to express my opinions. So when leaving Europe, I had to be extremely cautious with my speech. However, after returning to China, I really felt much freer. In China, no one would point their middle finger at you, curse at you, or throw rubbish at you just because you're not a native. China is not a country of immigration, so radical racism can rarely be found. On the contrary, in Europe, which prides itself on equality and fraternity, racism is a very common thing. In the top cities of Europe, such as London and Paris, after 8 p.m., there are very few people outside, and most of the businesses are closed. But here in China, where you go out after 8 p.m., there are many people out there on the streets. All kinds of businesses are open, and there's no concern about personal safety even after midnight. However, when you tell people from the United States or Europe that China is very safe and people are friendly, they won't believe you. When I was doing an internship at the US Embassy in Beijing in 2012, those Americans working in Beijing said that China was much safer than the United States. But if they said this to their American friends back home, they would say they are lying. Yuval Harari mentioned in his 2024 book, Nexus, that there's a kind of a naive view of information among the general public. This view holds that the more information there is, the more it can help humans approach the truth and enhance wisdom. Eventually, the mainstream information disseminated by society must be true information. But in many cases, this naive view is far from the truth. In China, as long as you don't criticize the civil officials at all levels, don't break the law or commit any misconduct, you can freely express whatever you want. No one cares about what you say. In the United States, you cannot insult Jewish capitalists because they are the actual ruling class, but here in China, if you insult capitalists such as Jack Ma or Liu Chuanzhi, you can say it freely without any problem. Moreover, in China, you can talk about gender issues and racial issues freely. But in the United States, you cannot talk such things freely because if you do, you might really expect a bullet to be shot at you. Look at Charlie Kirk. One is a capitalist country, the other is a socialist country. Due to the completely different national attributes of China and the United States, some naive Western citizens claim that China is not as free as the United States. Their argument is, you cannot insult the government. Ordinary people from any country must know their positions in history, do things and say things that are in line with their own identity and status. After all, in any society, the ruling class formulates the system rules. What ordinary people should do is to deeply understand the historical and cultural context of their own country and follow the system rules, adapt to them, and utilize the system to accumulate resources for themselves. Some people have been misled by some wrong ideas. If you are nobody with no power or resources, then you should not speak without limitations. Doing so means ruining your own future. After all, you can't just go around and curse capitalists in a capitalist country, badmouth politicians in a civil officials-dominated country, criticize military in a military-ruled country, or slander religion in a theocratic country. If you do so and you gain a strong influence, such behavior will be defined as treason. Throughout history, traitors usually do not have a good ending. So in any culture, we ordinary people should be cautious with our words and actions. Smart people know what to say and what to do. This is the right way for all ordinary people to survive and develop. Thank you very much for watching until here. If you like topics related to humanities and history, please hit the subscribe button and also like, comment, share. This will be of great help to my channel. If you do not agree with my viewpoints, please feel free to criticize me in the comment section. I'm hungry and I need to go get some food. So, see you in the next one.